Hi, Danville. Alan Shields here, Chief of Police for the town, and we're 10-8 and in service, which means we're here to make people's lives better. And we do that by safeguarding the lives, rights, and property of everyone we serve. Do me a favor. This is a live show, so if you have any questions, I'll be monitoring both the YouTube and the Facebook chat. If this is some content that you like, please give us a thumbs up. Throw a comment in there. Anything that lets us know that this is something worthwhile that you want to keep seeing here in the town. We're going to cover more of the annual report later. We're going to cover some of the commercial burglaries that we had, and then we're going to go over our FEMA All Hazards Guide, and then we're going to talk about e-bikes, e-scooters, and those sort of things. It might be a little repeat if you did watch the Town Talks with the Mayor. It'll be a little bit of a repeat. But what I would encourage you to do, if you didn't see Town Talks with the Mayor, you can go right to YouTube. It's posted there, and watch the Town Talks with the Mayor. There is a lot of construction going on downtown, and we had Dave Castile on, and he's our maintenance director. And along with Mayor Karen Stepper, they talked pretty extensively about what is happening downtown, more inviting and activating space. Also, what are the timelines? Are we going to be able to have a 4th of July parade? Is it going to be done for the tree lighting? All those questions get answered. So head on over there and watch that. Very, very interesting. As usual, download that FEMA All Hazards Guide. This is what we're highlighting and going over. I think we're in our 9th week of going over. We're almost done with this, and we'll move on to another series. And then make sure you go over it with your family. This is a good thing to print out. Put it in the drawer so you have it, and you can get some good information in there. Make sure you sign up for our Contra Costa County Office of the Sheriff Community Warning System. This is how you stay alert during disasters. This is one of the ways that we're going to put information out, and it also includes Nixle and some of the radios as well. Download the community wildfire preparedness and evacuation guide. In there, you're going to see a lot of information on what you can do to plan and be ready. So should a hazard happen, you, your family, even your pets are prepared for a disaster. The PG&E website is a good source of information. Make sure you head there. There's a lot of good info in there on what you can do to be prepared, but also in the event that there's a power safety power shutoff or any other event where your power is off, they can give you updates on when that power is going to be restored. All right, we're going to move on to crime. CommunityCrimeMap.com, this is where you can get all information about crime in Danville. You can set up alerts, and you can get information on the sexual offender registry there as well. April 22nd through the 28th, we had 1 injury collision, 2 property-only collisions, property damage only, and we had 1 hit-and-run reported. The hit-and-run was reported on the 22nd, but it was actually from April 4th or 5th, and this is where a car was struck while it was parked in the Marshall's parking lot. On the 24th, we had an injury collision, and this was within the intersection of Crow Canyon Road and Center Way out there by Blackhawk. And if you remember, when we look at the map, that's going to be the little yellow right there. And so the yellow means it's an injury collision, green is a non-injury collision, and then red would be for any fatals should we have those. On the 27th, a vehicle was into a tree. This was a non-injury collision on Comunitas Area near Blackhawk Road. And then on the 27th, we had a solo vehicle into a fence. That was a non-injury collision, and that was on the 700 block of Community Amigo. It was basically a big box truck trying to navigate a pretty challenging turn on a narrow road there. All right, for crime, what does it look like? We had 2 burglaries, both of them commercial, and then we had 3 thefts. The first burglary was actually at the Melt on Railroad, and that was after hours, so it was 3:31 in the morning. We've got pretty good leads on that, and we're hoping to close that case out. On the 22nd, we've got a theft of a spare tire and a jack from an unlocked car on Polito Road, and this was between the 12 a.m., so midnight on the 20th, and the 22nd at 7 a.m., so about a day and a half. On the 24th, there was a burglary of merchandise from Safeway. This was actually, it took place on April 6th. Kind of an interesting one. This was one where this was a pretty prolific suspect that had been committing crimes elsewhere. Danville officers happened to arrest him last couple weeks ago, and we ended up putting that case together as it went on. But that case was originally one of our Highway 24 agency cases that they had a warrant out for the person's arrest. So it's one of those where the person was actually arrested before we even took the report. So we were able to put it together on the back end. So very good case. On the 27th, we had an e-bike that was stolen, and this was from the outside of a home on Pixie Lane, and that was between the 25th at noon and the 27th at about 2:21 p.m. And then we had a late report of a wallet that was stolen and the report came in on the 28th, and the theft occurred on the 26th at Costco. And for the crime prevention tip on that one, again, all of the responsibility for these crimes when they occur, they belong with the person committing the crime. So the person that took the wallet, that's the person that's to blame for this. But how do we avoid being a victim of theft with things like wallets? One of the best things we can do, and you actually see mine, but if you can get it in a pocket, that's the best thing. Sometimes even a purse, even if it's zipped up, maybe not as effective as we'd prefer. So for me, I usually just tend to have just my phone and my wallet, and that's what sits in my pocket. It's the easiest way to avoid being a victim of a theft. Again, the responsibility belongs with our suspect, but if we can keep it as thin as possible, then we're good to go. The other thing is, you'll notice I put a little air tag on there. That's one of those, it's not a GPS tracking device, but it's a little tag that just happens to be the Apple version of it. But it's a little tag that you can put on property. This one happens to be on my wallet. I put them on my bicycles, just about everything. So should something get stolen and it becomes within range of another Apple device, which these things are all over, if it comes within range of that and you've reported your tag lost, it will alert you to the location. And so we have seen successful recoveries of properties where our owners have hidden little air tags on them. So just a little tip there. All right, let's look at our arrest log. Not very big. On the 28th, we had an arrest of a man for possessing a truck without a VIN number on it. And the arrest took place on Diablo Road near Green Valley Road. Ultimately, he was issued a notice to appear. Now, initially, you might think, hey, is this a stolen truck? Or what? Well, frankly, we don't know because there was no VIN number on it. License plate wasn't there. There was nothing to match on this car. So what we do and what we're waiting on, we towed that vehicle, so it's sitting in our parking lot now as evidence. And we're going to have CHP come down, and what they'll do is they'll do a VIN verification where they'll look for the, quote, hidden VINs and see if they can find those and see if we can't get who the actual owner of the truck is. And then we can work back from there. But at a minimum, it is illegal to drive a vehicle with altered or missing VINs. So we ended up arresting the person for that and citing him out on that. And we're going to continue the investigation to see if we can't return the vehicle to the owner. All right, we're going to go over some pretty convoluted stuff. So what I'm going to try to do is make it super, super simple. And please, this is, if you have a friend or you are the parent and you have a child and they're riding e-bikes or e-scooters or something that looks like an e-bike, but the reality is it's an off-highway motorcycle, essentially a dirt bike, please pay attention, forward this to them. There is, in the description, there's a link to the Orange County Sheriff's Office actually did a very good job of putting out a bulletin that has a lot of detailed information on it. And I put a link in the description there, but one of the things I wanted to do is just show you the matrix that's in there. So depending on, if you look at the rows, those represent the type of vehicle. So a bicycle, a class 1, 2, 3 e-bike, motorized scooters, mopeds, motor-driven cycles, motorcycles, low-speed vehicles, golf carts, pocket bikes. Each one of them has different vehicle code sections associated with it. Where can you ride it? Do you need to wear a helmet? It frankly can be really, really confusing. And so the first suggestion is if you are going to ride one of these yourself, if you're going to buy one for one of your kids and send them out to ride, please look at the type of vehicle that you're buying and then look at the rules associated with them. Because what we're finding is, and I'll use the scooter as an example. If you think about an electric scooter, and I'll throw a picture up real quick. This is what an electric scooter looks like. It's really designed for one person to ride. In fact, it's unlawful to have more than one person on it. You can't have kids riding them. You actually have to have a license or a permit. You cannot ride them anywhere in the state on a sidewalk. And if you're in the road, you have to be on a roadway that's rated for 25 miles per hour or less, or be in a designated bike lane. That's it. So a good example is if we go to a middle school here in town and I look and I see these scooters there, I have to presume that none of those kids have a permit or a license, and so they're all riding or driving those illegally because they have to ride on the road or on a sidewalk in order to get to the school. So that's what we're finding is there is some confusion. The thought is, hey, if this is something that I can go down to the store and buy, I should be able to have my kid ride it, and that's just not the case. So an e-bike, what is an e-bike? This is what an e-bike may look like. They come in, they look like traditional bikes. They might have a beefier down tube where a battery is. You might actually see an external battery pack attached. There might be motors down by the crank. That's where the pedals are. Could be on the rear wheel. And they look essentially like bikes, but there's 3 different classes of them. If you look, there's a class 1 e-bike, and those are ones that they're all pedal assist, but there is no throttle on a class 1 e-bike, and there is top speed assisted of 20 miles per hour. Now the ones with the throttles that go 20 miles per hour are going to be class 2. Those can be pedal assist and not. And then the class 3 e-bikes are the ones that go 28 miles an hour. So those are pretty fast. And again, the rules are going to be a little bit, let me put this up. The rules are going to be a little bit different for each. If you look on the class, all classes, if you're under 18, you have to wear a helmet. And then, if you're, you can ride them on the road. You can be pretty much anywhere. The issue is going to come in on the class 3 e-bike that everyone has to wear a helmet, and that's passenger, rider, everyone. The one thing that can be confusing is e-bikes have to follow the same rules of the road as a regular bike. And we had a pretty good motor officer one time that said, if you wouldn't do it on a bike or in a car, then you shouldn't be doing it on a bike. And what that means is if you come up to a stop sign, you have to obey the stop sign on a bike. A lot of bikes don't. If you come up to a stoplight, you have to stop and obey the stoplight. There is no special rule for bicycles. And we have been seeing, if you remember, I think it was 3 weeks ago, I reported on this show that we had 3 of our 4 collisions that week were on some form of bike, e-bike, or off-highway motorcycle. And let's look and see what an off-highway motorcycle is. And these sometimes parents can confuse these for e-bikes. These are not e-bikes. These are essentially dirt bikes that have electric motors on them. Some of them, what they'll do to try to get into the rules, so to speak, is they'll rate them for 28 miles an hour, but they'll put like a bypass chip in there that you can pull out. You pull that out, and now the vehicle can go 35, 40, 45 miles an hour, depending on the manufacturer. That is wildly fast. A few nights ago, my wife and I were walking through Osage Park, and there were 2 kids. One of them was riding with a motorcycle helmet. The one on back had a bike helmet, and it was so ill fit. It was just covering the backside of his head. And they were speeding, and I would visually estimate their speed at 40 plus miles an hour through the middle of Osage Park. Very, very dangerous. If we could have gotten an officer out there, certainly they would have been stopped. Now, the issue is if these are not allowed anywhere on the road. So you can't ride these down San Ramon Valley Boulevard. You can't ride them on El Pintado. You can't ride them on Lagonda Way, anywhere. And they are considered a vehicle. So if someone is riding this and there is no license plate on there, in other words, it's not permitted from DMV to be on the road, it can be towed. So, the flatbed truck can go, load this up, off it goes. And the driver can be cited for driving that vehicle in the road. So we're trying our best to work on an education campaign where we let people know what the rules are. We ask for compliance. We're in that phase right now where we're really trying to make sure, and we're trying to push out the information. In fact, we're going to pay for yard signs, and we're going to put them up like towards the Iron Horse Trail, by schools, anything to get the word out like, hey, this is a big deal. We're seeing hazardous conditions. In fact, last Thursday, I got an email from a resident saying that she was on the sidewalk and was almost hit several times by several different kids who were either on e-bikes or e-scooters, and it is absolutely hazardous downtown. And so please understand, we take it serious because we understand there's a safety aspect to it, and we want to get as much voluntary compliance as we can. However, we realize that doesn't sew everything up and it doesn't make everything better, so we will be moving to enforcement What that looks like is our officers will be stopping people that are either driving vehicles that they're not supposed to have on the road, or they're driving them improperly, such as having two people on one scooter. And we don't want to be the fun police. We know that, I mean, heck, if I was 14 years old and you gave me one of these, I would certainly have loved it. I would have certainly done wheelies all over town. But I know that my father would have ensured that I went to the right place to do it. And if anyone on this channel knows my dad, you know 100% there's no way we would have been riding those in the street. That would have been met with some swift discipline. So please help us out. Our goal, as always, is when we can have those days where we write no tickets and we make no arrests. And the reason is in order for us to write a ticket, that means someone is driving a car, riding a motorcycle, doing something that creates a hazardous condition where someone can get hurt. If we're making arrests, that typically means that someone else has already been hurt, right? There's maybe been a battery, maybe there's been a collision where someone was hurt and there was an illegal act associated with it. We'd rather be on the prevention side of that. Understand, we'll absolutely investigate the crimes. We'll absolutely make those arrests. We will do that. But the good day for us is when we can work heavy on the prevention and keep this from happening. So I've got a couple of Lou, thanks for the comments. I do appreciate those. John, thank you for the thumbs up on the information. And then Lou has a good comment here. He says, electric bikes on the trail are a challenge because they make so little noise. That's true, and they are fast. I mean, I've had one of these, this exact bike, pass me on the trail at going what I thought was lightning speed. It was very, very fast. And even if you're on a bicycle, so I will ride my bike to and from work. I use the trail because it's the safest way to get from kind of that Sycamore intersection to downtown. It's the safest way. So I'll go on my bike. Well, I don't ride my bike 20 or 25 miles an hour when I'm on the trail. I slow it down to 20 miles or 15 miles an hour. That's the speed limit, right? And then if I'm coming up onto people, I'll ring a bell, I'll call out and say good morning, good afternoon, something to let the person know that I'm coming up and I'm passing them so I don't scare them. And that's doubly for the dogs too, right? Because they get pretty spooked. So Lou, that's a good example, and I think that's where a lot of times rider perspective is different than walker perspective, and you see this in cars with crosswalks all the time. A car may enter a crosswalk when they feel it's safe to do so, but if you're that pedestrian that's walking and that car comes really close to you, your perception is they didn't give enough space. And I think that's what we see with these electric bikes and scooters is we see these kids and they'll zip by because they can see a sliver of space where it's good. But we all know from experience that sometimes you might take a step left or right, and now that safe condition is now a hazardous condition. We know it's better if we just ride slower and call out and do those things that are basically good trail etiquette. So Lou, that's a good example there. And that's what I have for that. So please help us push that out. Realize we're going to be doing a really big push over the next probably 2 weeks on the education side, and then we're going to move right into enforcement. And we'd rather be very light on that. All right, moving on to the annual report. Quickly going to go over our mental health response. And if you look to the left, that is our Seneca Center giving our officers and staff some training on their mobile response team. Seneca does the response for juveniles, so those under the age of 18. A3 that's their emblem on the right, anyone, anywhere, anytime. They do the mobile crisis response for people adults actively in crisis. And then in the middle there, that's our mental health evaluation team. The mental health evaluation team should be seen more as, I'll kind of describe this. Mental health evaluation is like case management. A lot of times our officers in the field, they'll see someone who's not quite okay, but they're also not so in crisis that they're a danger to themselves, others are gravely disabled. So they're in that in between. And maybe the family member gives us some history and says, yeah, this they're kind of heading down that wrong path again. And if we can divert them, we can see success. Well, this is where we take our mental health evaluation team. We just call Jen Yen, that's the deputy that you saw in the picture. We say, hey, we need some help on this. And what she'll do is instead of waiting for the crisis to happen, waiting for the crisis to pop, Jen and her partner will actually go out proactively engage with the family, engage with the person that's heading towards crisis, and see if they can get voluntary compliance. Because if you're in crisis, it's really hard to convince someone to have a rational thought to take themselves or take the transportation to the hospital. So Jen does a great job of working with clinicians and hospitals and family members to kind of put all those resources together to get the person help. And it really does work to reduce our calls. Last year alone, Jen and her team, they handled 16 calls for assistance, and they responded to all 16. So very, very good. On the A3, now please understand the A3, the anyone, anywhere, anytime response from the county is very new, and they respond all over the county. In last year, we were able to get statistics. We made 52 referrals to A3. They physically responded 5 times, and they provided phone support on 12. And some of that is when someone's in crisis, an officer will always go out, and they may resolve the issue prior to A3 being able to do something. So there is some of that as well. But they're working hard. They're getting more teams out in the field, and they continue to ramp up and do better. Let's look at our statistics. This is going to give you a 5-year look at our involuntary commitments, and let me describe what that is. So an involuntary commitment is typically what people call a 5150, and what it's defined as is when someone is unable to, or rather a danger to themselves, a danger to others, or gravely disabled, and they're in that condition due to a mental health condition. And so what our officers have the authority to do is to conduct an evaluation in the field, make a determination if someone meets the criteria for 5150, and should they meet that criteria, we will have, in this case, San Ramon Valley Fire, transport that person to mental health. And in California, the way it works is 5150 states that we have to have that person transported to a facility that's approved by the state and recommended by the county. And so for us, we have 2 institutions that are approved by the state. That's John Muir and Contra Costa Regional Medical Center. And then the county directs us to Contra Costa as our primary intake. So that's where everyone goes, is to Contra Costa Regional Medical Center. And so when we get called, we will do the evaluation. We get called, you're going to see numbers up here, but realize we get called to a lot more incidents where people are in crisis. They just may not meet the criteria. So if we look, and I'm just going to go over the totals real quick, and you can see we stay under 100 for the most part. But if you look at the breakdown between adults and juveniles, it does go up and down a little bit. And sometimes, frankly, if you look at 20, 21, 22, we kind of had an uptick in the juveniles. A lot of those, when we looked at the numbers, they're relative to homes. And so those could be multiple commitments at one location. And these are homes that are designed to help people that may be struggling with mental health issues, kids. And then if you look at the tenure, 2018, there was quite a bit at 128. 2015, we had 106. And then every year after that, it's been under 100. And 2023, we actually ended up our lowest in the last 10 years at 72. So very low number of commitments that year. It doesn't mean that there aren't people in crisis. It doesn't mean that people aren't suffering from anxiety and depression and those things. It just means that maybe it didn't rise to the level of a 5150 commitment. All right, our FEMA All Hazards Guide, we'll go over that real quick. And we're going in alphabetical order, so we're looking at thunderstorms, lightning, or hail. And I didn't know this until I looked at the white box there, but it says lightning is the leading cause of injury and death from weather-related hazards. And so it makes sense that in the advice column it says, if you're out in a thunderstorm, go inside. You can't get hit by lightning if you're inside, I hope. And then pay attention to the alerts and warnings that you get. It says don't use landline phones. I'm almost curious who has a landline phone anymore. And then it says move from outdoors into buildings or cars. And here's the one thing, advice I want to give. A lot of times in some of our areas where we have overhead power lines here in town, we'll get these thunderstorms. You're going to be having these huge wind gusts, 50, 60 miles an hour, and some of those lines will go down. A tree branch falls on something, and the lines go down in the road. So you may be driving, and you may see those lines down the road. Certainly don't cross them. Don't walk near them. That, and I'm not an electricity expert, so if there's someone on PG&E here, jump in by all means. But they tell us to stay, 30 plus feet away from these lines. We usually back that up to 100 feet so that we can make sure that we're nowhere near those lines. We can't tell if they're energized, de-energized, or not. So we will bring in, and this is where we love our reserves. We have reserve police officers. If you remember, they're the ones that wear the uniform. They have all the same police officer powers that we do, and they do it for free. And they'll usually come out and help us with traffic control to make sure that you have as much warning as possible not to go near those. However, big issues, big storms, we're not going to be able to cover them all, so it's up to you to know if power lines are down, that's not something that we're going to go near. All right, I'm checking, see if there's any other questions in the chat. I don't see any, so it looks like we're going to be done. Please go and sign up for the Community Warning System alert, and then download the Contra Costa Residence Guide to Wildfire Preparedness and Evacuation. Visit the PG&E website, and make sure you download the FEMA All Hazards Guide. Those are all things that are going to keep you prepared and ready should there be some sort of a hazard. With that, we're 10:10, which means we're off duty, but we're always 10:8 in service to you. Have a good night, Danville.